Hi guys, it's Frankie from Frankie Tech. Good to see you guys again, and I'm here with part 2 of my Mi 10T Pro versus iPhone 12 versus OnePlus 8T comparison. Now before moving forward with part 2, I just want to address a little bit of the concerns that it seemed I got in the comments to part 1. Now guys, I know it's really difficult as an Android user to see an iPhone comparison and not feel that there's so many things that these types of phones do better. And yet the reality is, guys, there's a lot of things that I can appreciate from both Android and from iPhone. And in the case of the earlier sections, design, display, and performance, that is a lot of things that this iPhone 12 does right. But as we'll see here in this part 2, there's a number of key areas where I think this iPhone 12 does also fall behind the competition. So without further ado, let's continue here with part 2 of this epic triple comparison. Now, in terms of battery life, I want to split this section up into two kind of awards here. So battery drain and charging capabilities. And going over the battery specs of these phones, 5,000 milliamperes on the Mi 10T Pro in terms of capacity, 4,500 on the OnePlus 8T, and get this, 2,815 milliamperes on the iPhone 12. And you may be thinking, did I hear that right? That this iPhone 12 has an under 3,000 milliampere battery. It definitely does. And now here's the thing, guys. The power usage of iPhones tends to be very different from Android phones. And even my iPhone 11 Pro Max, which has been one of the best battery champs of 2019, is using an under 4,000 milliampere battery capacity. The reality is, guys, iOS is a much more efficient and optimized platform. The battery usage on iPhones is just completely different. And yet that being said, the iPhone 12 has reduced its battery capacity even from the iPhone 11 of last year. Meanwhile, the Mi 10T Pro is easily a 2-day phone with this 5,000 milliampere capacity, and in my testing so far of the OnePlus 8T, still has a very respectable battery capacity. Of all the areas of comparison between these phones, I think this is where the iPhone 12 really falls short. And so far, I've been getting around 4.5, maybe 5 hours of screen on time, but the real drops in performance have been when using 5G. Here at home on Wi-Fi, it's been okay, but I can tell you for now, this is the iPhone's weakest spec by far. And just on sheer capacity and how excellent the battery life has been on this phone, I give the battery drain award here to the Mi 10T Pro. But now talking about the charging capabilities, we have a 33 watt fast charging capability here on the Mi 10T Pro. The iPhone 12 has a 20 watt charging capability, including the 15 watt MagSafe charging capability that honestly I've really enjoyed and I've been using for the past 2 days. I think it's a really elegant solution between wired charging and wireless charging, but if charging speed is all you're going for, you only have one phone here that's going to take the win, the OnePlus 8T. With a 65 watt warp charging, you can go from 0 to 100% on this phone in just under 40 minutes. And this is the first OnePlus phone to really use this type of charging that I've seen on phones like the Realme X2 Pro and other Oppo and Vivo phones. But I'm just going to point this out that the iPhone 12 is the only of these three phones that does support wireless charging, including the new MagSafe charging as well. And yet despite the additional features of charging and capabilities of the iPhone 12, I'm going to give the fast charging award here to the OnePlus 8T. Now talking about fingerprint scanners and vibration motors, we have three completely different solutions on each of these phones. The Mi 10T Pro is using this capacitive side-mounted fingerprint scanner, yet I will tell you guys it is a really fast and really responsive fingerprint scanner. Meanwhile, the OnePlus 8T is using an in-display optical fingerprint scanner, which is super fast and super responsive. And I would say between these two, I much prefer the optical fingerprint scanner. Not only is it centralized, which means you can use it with both your right and your left hands, as you can see, but there's just less animations as well, and so it goes in really fast. I'm sorry guys, but I will never truly love these types of fingerprint scanners. And so when it comes to actual fingerprint scanners, I give the award here to the OnePlus 8T. Now, of course, the iPhone 12 doesn't even have a fingerprint scanner, but instead it is using Face ID, which in my opinion, whether you love it or you hate it, is the best facial recognition technology on any phone. And no, I'm not talking about the 2D kind of face unlock that Android phones use. I'm talking about a 3D Face ID system that can be used for banking, for payments. It really is the standard in terms of face unlock on the market. And yes, I know you need this giant notch to make it work, but to be honest, I still love Face ID, even though its utilities become a bit more questionable in this crazy year of 2020 when we're using face masks all the time. So So because of that, because of the centralized positioning and the real speed at which you get in, I give the biometric unlock win here to the OnePlus 8T. And in terms of vibration motor, the Mi 10T Pro is offering one of the best haptic feedbacks I've felt on any Xiaomi phone. And the OnePlus 8T's haptics are also terrific. They're up there with the OnePlus 8 Pro. Really solid haptic feedback, albeit a little bit weak. I wish you could actually adjust the strength of the feedback because it is a little bit weaker here on the OnePlus 8T. But guys, whether you've tried them or not, I'm just gonna say it, the gold standard for haptic or vibration on any smartphone today is still on the iPhone. If you've never used the haptic feedback on an iPhone, go to the store and just give it a try. It really is one of the highlights of using an iPhone, and while phones like the Mi 10T Pro get very close now, they still don't reach that level of just precise and really just good feeling haptics that you get on something like an iPhone 12. And so while the competition has really stepped it up, I still give the vibration and haptic award here to the iPhone 12. And in terms of comms, all these phones are 5G capable. They're using the latest Wi-Fi 6, NFC on board all these phones, Bluetooth 5.1 versus 5.0 versus 5.1, and USB Type-C on these phones, while the iPhone 12 is still using Lightning. The reality is that comms on all of these phones is going to be incredible, and they are all 5G capable. I'm going to call a tie in this section. You really can't go wrong with any of these phones. And here we go with the audio speaker test between the Mi 10T Pro, the iPhone 12, and the OnePlus 8T. Dual speakers on all of these phones, but no headphone jacks. Let me point the mic forward. Let's have a listen. What can I say? A very interesting result here in this audio speaker test. The OnePlus 8T definitely had the loudest sound of these phones. And the Mi 10T Pro also gets very loud, but it gets a bit more tinny at 100%. Meanwhile, the iPhone 12, while not the loudest of these three, I think has the most balanced sound between bass, mids, and highs. Now look, if you equate the volume of a phone to quality, then I think you're probably going to be happier with both the OnePlus 8T or the Mi 10T Pro. But I just think that the balance of sound is better on the iPhone 12. It's a really close call here if you want the louder speaker or, in my opinion, the better sounding speaker. But if we're talking about sound quality overall, I give the audio speaker win here to the iPhone 12. And last but not least, the big section here, the cameras. And we have a main 108 megapixel camera here on the Mi 10T Pro, while the iPhone 12 is using an updated 12 megapixel f1.6 main camera. And the OnePlus 8T is using a pretty old at this point IMX586 48 megapixel main camera. And in terms of additional cameras, the Mi 10T Pro is using a 13 megapixel ultra-wide and a 5 megapixel macro camera, while the iPhone 12 has opted for a second 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and the OnePlus 8T has a 16 megapixel f2.2 ultra-wide, a 5 megapixel macro, and a 2 megapixel depth. And I'm going to say this one last time, Android OEMs, please stop including these depth and macro cameras in your phones. I know it looks cool to say you have a triple or a quad camera setup on the phone, but the reality is, guys, I would rather have less cameras and have them be good than have a bunch of garbage cameras and have them be bad. 4K 60 FPS available on all these phones, but the Mi 10T Pro is capable of 8K at 30 FPS. 20 versus 12 versus 16 megapixels on the front, with the Mi 10T Pro and the OnePlus 8T capable of shooting full HD 30 FPS, while the iPhone 12 is capable of 4K 60 FPS video on the front camera. And so now it's time to share my camera samples, both stills and video, in day and night. So have a look at the samples and let's talk about them when we get back. This is rear-facing video on the Mi 10T Pro, the iPhone 12, and the OnePlus 8T. Coming to around 5 p.m. here in Hong Kong, and the sun is going down quick these days, but really great stabilization looks like on all these phones. Hope you guys are doing well, staying safe, and hit me up in the comments. What do you think? And this is front-facing video on the Mi 10T Pro, the iPhone 12, and the OnePlus 8T, shooting in Full HD, 4K 30, and Full HD. That's the max capability of each of these phones. So clearly the iPhone 12 wins out in terms of actual quality. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Hope you're doing well, having a great weekend. Hit me up in the comments. What do you think? So what'd you guys think? Did the Mi 10T Pro hold its own? Did the OnePlus 8T do well despite this kind of older sensor? Or did the iPhone 12 win out in the end? Guys, I'm just going to say it this way. There's a clear gap in my perception of the camera quality of this iPhone 12 next to these two phones, both in day and in night. Now there's some areas where the Mi 10T Pro and even the OnePlus 8T did a solid job, but I would say the dynamic range and the overall quality of the camera here on this iPhone 12 was just superior. And the camera didn't struggle taking a lot of these flower shots, while the Mi 10T Pro and OnePlus 8T just didn't know what to do with these intense flowery colors. And then at night, while there were a few shots where I think the Mi 10T Pro did pretty well, the iPhone 12 still had the most consistent shots with better detail, especially in the ultra-wide shots. The one section where I think these two phones did better was in front camera performance. I actually liked the selfies from these two phones, both in day and night, although video was a completely different story. Both front and rear video on the iPhone 12, I think, are still the gold standard for video on any phone. So when you take into account all these various sections of camera performance, I gotta give it here to the iPhone 12. And this is proof that you really don't need all the cameras on the back. You don't need the biggest megapixel count. What you need is great computational photography and just really solid sensors with an f1.6 main camera that is able to draw in more light. And it's so great to see that you're getting an incredible camera here on this iPhone 12. It hands down takes the camera around between these phones. And so that's it for this video and my final verdict after this part 2. And guys, by the way, I will be saving the gaming comparison between these to an Antutu gaming and throttling test that I do have planned early next week. But if we look at all of these sections, we clearly see the areas where the iPhone 12 just truly shines. The reality is, guys, the OnePlus 8T and the Mi 10T Pro are terrific devices. And if you took this iPhone out of the equation, I think there's a lot of things you could say just about these two phones alone. It could be an entirely separate video. And I think the winner between these two would be really tough to call. Xiaomi has done a lot right here with this Mi 10T Pro, and OnePlus has delivered a very solid phone here in this 8T, despite the kind of mediocre camera performance. But I already know this video is going to get a lot of hate for my final verdict here after part 2, but I'm going to say it. I think the iPhone 12 is the best balanced and well-rounded phone of these three. The reality is, a final verdict with this type of video is never going to make everyone happy, and I know a lot of you guys think that iPhone is trash. I'm never going to change your opinion about it. I love aspects of all of these phones, but when I look at all of the sections covered and just think about which phone offers the best experience in each one, tally them up, I get my conclusion. Your winner of this triple comparison after part 2 is the iPhone 12. But hit me up in the comments. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think, how dare you, Frankie, say that this iPhone 12 is the winner of these three phones? The reality is, guys, these types of comparisons are always very difficult to make, and I think a lot of you likely will be happier with a different one of these phones. I'm here just to share my honest take, and if you think I've made the wrong assessment, do let me know, and I'll be happy to have some civil discourse in the comments section. It's about having healthy disagreements about the tech that we love. I do it for the love of tech, and I do it because I have a passion for both iPhones and Android phones, and I love to be able to share these types of phones and products here on Frankie Tech with all of you. But that's it for this video. If you liked it, give me that thumbs up, and if you love the content of Frankie Tech, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for future updates, and I will be taking a break tomorrow, actually heading out to Disneyland, and stay tuned, of course, to my big Antutu and gaming test coming shortly after that. So that's it. Have a great weekend, guys, and this is where I leave you by saying, this is Frankie Tech, signing off. Have a good one.